I know I'm a little late on this, but in my defense, when episode 9 came out, I did not have access to this YouTube channel. But I'm here now, and though it's been quite a few months since I last watched this movie, and over a year since I saw it in theaters, the very strong emotions that I felt while watching it are still pretty fresh in my mind. So yeah, this is going to be my review of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, undoubtedly the greatest movie ever to grace the theater, and a completely satisfying ending to this decades-long film franchise that gave a satisfying resolution to every character arc and tied up every single loose end. No, this movie's fucking garbage. Alright, so I'm not going to be super scripted in this review. I've just jotted down some notes that I'm going to be going off of in my rant, so just bear with me. And if you don't want to sit through this entire review, then just go watch my condensed thoughts on The Rise of Skywalker, which I uploaded a week earlier. Anyway, let's get to the stupid. And spoilers ahead, of course. Alright, so, first off, Palpatine coming back. Did we miss a movie or something? Like, what? This, was this built up to at all? I don't think so. I mean, this, like, it's so incredibly strange how this movie starts. Like, even in the opening crawl, like, it's as if, like, the opening crawl basically explains, the dead speak, you know, people have been hearing rumors about, like, Palpatine coming back, and, like, which, that was not built up to at all, or established at all, in the previous movie, The Last Jedi. So, like, what? And it's so random, because, like, Palpatine coming back, like, it isn't this massive reveal or anything. Like, it happens within the first few minutes of the movie, and it's just complete and total whiplash, where it's like, it's trying to introduce this entirely new plotline that was not built up to at all in the previous film, where, you know, it's just like, oh, hey, it's Palpatine, I'm back, I'm here, and, like, let's explain this entire thing about why I'm alive in, like, a few minutes, even though it's not really an explanation at all. It's just, you know, explained as basically, somehow Palpatine returned. One of the dumbest lines in, movie history, by the way. And, like, it's so ridiculous, because, like, the plotline of Palpatine coming back to life, like, it could be cool. I mean, yeah, it's sort of, it sort of undoes the accomplishments of, like, what happened before in the original trilogy, but, like, it could be definitely a cool plotline, because Palpatine is a cool villain, and obviously there's, you know, non-canon material to base a story like that off of, you know, where Palpatine comes back through cloning and stuff, but it should have been a reveal in the last movie or something, or properly built up to, that, like, Palpatine was going to make a return, but it's just, like, it's come so out of nowhere in this movie, except that it doesn't, because it was, like, Palpatine coming back was, like, it was completely spoiled by the trailers in the first place, and then it's spoiled in, like, the first few minutes of the movie, and not given any explanation other than, oh, dark science, cloning, secrets only the Sith knew, somehow Palpatine returned. And it's so ridiculous, like, it's like, what it is exactly is basically, you know, the last movie was taking the series in a certain direction, and then it's like the film creators decided, oh, well, let's not, like, expand on any of that, let's just bring in this entirely new plot that wasn't set up at all with Palpatine's return, and it's just kind of, it's just completely ridiculous. Alright, secondly, why the fuck was it necessary to introduce this giant fleet of Star Destroyers that Palpatine somehow has on the planet Exegol, that are all basically mini Death Stars? Like, why? It makes no sense to have, like, this entirely new threat be introduced, because if you remember, in the last movie, The Last Jedi, the First Order was utterly getting its, the First Order was, you know, it was kicking the Resistance's ass. Like, you know, the heroes were already on the run on the in the last movie, so why? So wouldn't it have been, you know, fine to, even if you're going to introduce Palpatine, why do you have to introduce this, like, massive, incredibly large, like, super OP fleet of Star Destroyers that can blow up a planet, when you already have the entire First Order, which is already basically controlling the galaxy in the last movie with the Resistance on its last legs? Why is it so necessary to introduce this incredibly massive, like, threat when the threat was already, like, it's just like, it's power escalation is what it is. Like, people talk about this thing where, like, oh, you think upping the stakes to these ridiculous degrees will get you more invested, but it doesn't. It just screams of lazy writing where, just making it so that there's this incredible, like, unbeatable threat. Like, it doesn't necessarily, make the stakes higher, because, you have to make the stakes personal for our characters and actually show losses, which isn't even what the film does, because this giant fleet on Exegol that Palpatine somehow creates on a backwater planet, like, it doesn't even accomplish shit other than blowing up one planet, similar to the Death Star in A New Hope, I guess. But, like, it doesn't even accomplish shit, and they defeat it so easily. So what was even the point of introducing it in the first place? Like, and why the fuck would, Kylo Ren even take up Palpatine's offer in the first place? Again, he was already winning. So what is the point of introducing this giant fleet that's defeated so easily in the end? I don't get it. It makes no sense. And seriously, can I just say, like, it's so ridiculous that, in the last movie, Kylo Ren's character arc was basically, he was working for the big bad, and then he killed the big bad, and then, he was supposed to become the big bad. But again, in this entire movie, he just basically is playing second fiddle to another big bad sitting on a throne. Like, it's doing the exact same thing in, that the Last Jedi did. And it's just, why is it necessary to repeat this ground? Why couldn't you actually, give Ben Solo a more compelling leadership role rather than having him be, again, another dark Sith Master's bitch boy? Like, it just... gosh. You could have taken his character in such an interesting direction. But again, it's just repeating old plot threads and introducing this massive, giant... Like, what was even the deal with the First Order in this movie? Like, they were basically... jeez. The threat was already powerful enough. You didn't need to make it, like, a billion, bajillion times more powerful with this giant fleet. Like, it just becomes ridiculous. Anyway, another problem with this movie. What the fuck is up with Lightspeed? Like, seriously, this trilogy, the new trilogy, has never been very consistent with how Lightspeed works. Like, there was some pretty ridiculous parts where, like the one where Han, basically, he went into Lightspeed and somehow came out of it just precise enough to get past the Starkiller base's shields, but also not crash into the planet, which, like, would have been incredibly difficult if you're going Lightspeed, which is ridiculous. But, like, and of course that Holdo scene, oh my gosh, in that last movie, that was so ridiculous and just broke all the rules of space fighting in this franchise. Like, why didn't they just ram the Death Star with hyperspeed if it's so effective? Really don't get that. But good God, Lightspeed gets ridiculously abused throughout this entire movie. Like, Lightspeed skipping. This movie takes place over, I think, 16 hours, which is how long Palpatine or somebody else says before, the Exegol fleet is ready to launch out. And in 16 hours, like, they managed to go over, like, the entire galaxy, traveling to all these places. Like, that doesn't seem the least bit ridiculous. Like, you're telling me these fucking blowhards travel over the entire galaxy and do all the shit that they did in 16 fucking hours before Palpatine launches his final attack? Remember in A New Hope when Han Solo was talking about all the complex calculations you have to do in order to enter into hyperspace? I mean, I guess that's not a thing anymore. Like, TIE Fighters... TIE Fighters don't even have a fucking hyperdrive, and they certainly wouldn't just be able to pop in through Lightspeed wherever the Millennium Falcon, just popped out of Lightspeed, which is what happens in a scene in this movie. Like, Lightspeed skipping, it shouldn't be possible in the first place, but it definitely shouldn't be possible for the TIE Fighters, even if they did have a hyperdrive, to just follow to the exact location where these guys are going. You can't do that, especially if they're not putting in direct coordinates and are just going randomly. Like, how the fuck would the TIE Fighters follow them? It's just... Oh, that chase scene was so ridiculous. Like, this is it just reeks of like lazy, and I know what people are gonna say. Oh, don't think about it. Like, you have to take creative liberties, and like, don't get so hung up on the details of how all this stuff works. But like, it's okay to take some liberties in a story, because obviously this is, it's fantasy, and like, it's not actually happening in reality. So, but like, you have to have some consistent logic about how your universe and the technology in your universe actually works, or else how the fuck am I supposed to care about it? Because it's just like, oh, if you need to get out of a situation, oh, we can just make up a new thing about how this works, even if it's inconsistent with how we've seen it work in the past, because, we're writers, we can do whatever we want. Like, it's just, it takes you out of it when, like, they don't even add consistent logic to, like, how this shit works in the first place. Even if it's kept vague, like, it has to be somewhat consistent. But Lightspeed in this movie is just... And in the last movie, my gosh. Anyway, another thing about this movie, so what I don't understand is, rather than actually focusing on the plot of defeating the First Order, the entire first hour of this movie is just a quest for a MacGuffin called the Sith Dagger that leads to another MacGuffin quest, literally called the Wayfinder, dumbest name ever, that was just introduced to this movie so they could find their way to Exegol, which Kylo Ren already did within the first 3 minutes. Like, why was it so necessary to stretch this, like, this search for these two MacGuffins out for an entire hour of the movie? Why was it so necessary to focus so much on this? Like, it's ridiculous. This movie should have been focused on gathering forces and defeating the First Order. Instead, they made up this entirely new plotline that wasn't set up in the first movie about finding these MacGuffins and trying to track them down, which ultimately adds up to a lot of really pointless filler in the end that you could have used to focus on character moments and actually developing the story. But instead, you just introduced this pointless MacGuffin quest to find these things, and like, you could have had, had these elements and them trying to get to Exegol, but you could have shortened it a lot. Like, there didn't need to be this much filler in the movie. Like, the Force is stretched and abused so much in the first place. Why couldn't the story just have Rey sense where Palpatine was in the movie? Or maybe something like give the MacGuffins actually more intrigue and importance, rather than being completely boring plot devices that weren't even necessary to introduce in the story in the first place. It just... And again, it's so incredibly pointless to introduce this incredibly long search for these MacGuffins to find their way to Exegol, because, like, fucking Lando just, at the end of the movie, somehow brings a million bajillion ships to Exegol all at once without much issue of, like, navigating towards it or finding it. Like, it's just, you couldn't have... And again, it's just, it goes back to what I'm talking about. Like, this entire movie should have been about, like, or the entire first hour of this movie, anyway, should have been about, like, character development and about, basically all the characters and the Resistance gathering up forces to go against the First Order, but instead they skipped all that, and instead all the gathering forces shit, like, that's done off screen by Lando, who does it in, like, a matter of hours and somehow brings a million bajillion ships to Exegol all at once to defeat the bad guys, even though that wasn't built up at all. But yeah, it's just... Seriously, this movie just focuses on so much pointless shit that shouldn't be here, and yet it feels like it's going at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I mean, has anyone else noticed this? Like, the movie, it feels like it's going so incredibly fast, like, it just goes from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. But like, it also feels like it's going nowhere, especially for the first hour of the movie, where it's just like, the plot is not actually moving, because nothing's happening except, them going on this magical MacGuffin quest that could have been cut out of the movie in the first place. Like, you're not focusing on anything interesting with this quest. Like, it's just... Oh my gosh, I don't understand the creative decision behind this. It makes no sense. It's just going from place to 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 place, while not really focusing on any solid story or character arcs like there were in the last two movies. Like, or the other movies for that matter. I mean, like, they're just almost... Oh my gosh, it just enrages me, because, like, the entire time watching this movie, there was almost no scenes where the characters just, like, stopped and slowed down and breathed. They were, like... This movie felt so slow in like actually getting to the point and actually getting to the story, where it just like focused so much time on this MacGuffin quest that could have either been shortened down or like cut out of the movie entirely, while not actually like giving ample time to focus on any of the stuff that should be important, like uh, character moments and actual important story beats and stuff like that. But oh gosh. Anyway, also another problem I have with this movie. Oh, the dialogue. Oh my gosh. It is. This movie is honestly like prequel meme worthy shit dialogue. Like seriously. Oh, they fly now. Oh, they fly now. They fly now. The writers seriously thought that was a good piece of dialogue. Oh my gosh. And it's not just that. Like there's a bunch of awful dialogue throughout this movie. Like the banter, like there was such awful dialogue and banter between the characters. Like, I know it was supposed to be endearing how, oh, they're getting snappy with each other, and, like, it's supposed to be funny and stuff, but I did not find it funny, and it just really got on my nerves with the characters. Like, it was not funny or endearing. It just, like, the banter between the characters, it just really felt like forced in a lot of ways, and I didn't really get the sense that these were people who, they had a really good relationship with each other and cared about each other. It just felt like, they were annoying each other because the writers thought it would be, I don't know, funny and stuff, and it just wasn't. I really didn't have many laughs throughout this movie, and, and that's interesting because I actually thought, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, was probably the funniest Star Wars movie in the main series. But yeah, they fly now. Oh, they fly now. Oh, they fly now. Oh my gosh. So dumb. Anyway, but yeah. By the way, another problem I have with this movie, there weren't really many compelling or memorable action scenes I can remember. Like, first of all, the lightsaber fight between Rey and Kylo was kind of boring as shit. I actually didn't find it very interesting. I mean, I like their lightsaber duel a lot in the in episode 7. I thought it was actually really good. I know some people didn't really like it, thought it was kind of boring. I thought it was really great, shot very well, and had some really great moments. Their lightsaber duel in this movie, I just did not find it very interesting. A lot of the other stuff too, like Kylo's fight against the Knights of Ren, they beat him up, then he beats them in like a minute with his lightsaber, because of course, and like, I just can't think of any scenes from this movie that were like super memorable, whereas in pretty much, action wise, whereas I can pretty much think of scenes like that from, every single other movie that's come by so far in the franchise, like, the Duel of the Fates in episode 1, the the Yoda lightsaber scene in, episode 2, like, stuff like, there's been incredibly memorable action scenes in every single movie, but my mind does not go back and want to watch any particular scene from this movie that, like, stands out, because it's relatively uninteresting. I don't know, it just didn't really have, none of the action scenes had a bunch of passion or anything. It just got kind of dull for me. Anyway, so another problem I have with this movie, Lando Calrissian is boring. Like, yeah, I guess it was cool that they introduced his character. Honestly, I wasn't really... Lando Calrissian was never really a huge favorite for me, but cool, I guess, that he's here. But, like, he's not interesting, though. Like, he's just... when Han was introduced again in episode 7, like, it was a really great... He actually had a purpose in that movie, and he had a really great character arc, and I felt like they took his character in really interesting directions, and, I felt for him. He was, like, one of my favorite characters in that movie, and I actually found his character to be more interesting than in the original trilogy. Like, there was a clear purpose to his character being in that movie, and I guess there's a clear purpose for Lando's character being in this movie, because, he's the one who does the Deus Ex Machina and brings all those, that giant ship fleet to defeat the First Order somehow. But, I don't know, there was nothing really particularly interesting about his character. Like, I didn't feel like he went through any kind of major arc. He didn't get a ton of focus. Like, it felt like they just brought him back to, oh, here's Lando Calrissian to be fan service, I guess, and to solve all our problems because we are shit writers and didn't know how to end this movie. Even though it would have been easier to end this movie if you didn't introduce this giant apocalyptic threat that wasn't necessary in the first place. But anyway, like, and there are things that you could have done to make his character actually interesting in this movie. One of which was to, have him actually, have scenes with his daughter, who is a character in this movie, except they don't reveal that it's his daughter, and it's like, apparently it is. Apparently that girl who is like, talking, who, basically she used to be a stormtrooper, and then she meets Finn and stuff. Apparently she was actually Lando's daughter, which maybe it would have been a good idea to have that explored to make Lando a more interesting character who's more integral to the plot. But I'm not a professional writer who's given millions of dollars to write the conclusion to basically the biggest franchise of all time. But so what do I know? But yeah, I just like Lando Calrissian was really boring in this movie. I just didn't find him interesting. So that's a problem I have. Another problem I have: the Knights of Ren. Why the fuck are you even going to introduce these guys if they were never even going to do anything cool in the first place? Like, you hear about the Knights of Ren in the first movie. I mean, obviously the seventh movie, but the first movie of this new trilogy. And like, it's, oh, hey, who are these Knights of Ren guys? They seem like, oh, they're all mysterious and shit. And then in The Last Jedi, they don't do anything. And then, honestly, I was thinking, okay, so these Knights of Ren, like, they're nobody, basically, and they're not going to have any significance in the plot. And then they introduce them in this movie, in the final movie of this saga, and they don't do shit. They don't do fucking shit. Like, they have one of the most bland and, like, uninteresting, underwhelming introductions of all time. Like, just walking through a hallway, and they don't do anything cool. They don't do a single thing cool in this movie. Kylo Ren just betrays them and then kills them very easily once he gets the lightsaber. I guess none of them were very strong in the first place. And, like, we don't know anything about who they are, like, what they stand for, what their actual relationship with Kylo Ren is, and how he formed them, or if he formed them in the first place. So I guess they were just throwaway characters. And, like, they have really cool designs. And it would have been so cool to, have them actually do something in this movie significant, but they didn't. They just all died because Kylo Ren killed them because he turned good, and it was, what, I don't understand. Like, why even introduce them if you're not going to do anything with them? It's ridiculous. It's like Boba Fett all over again, except Boba Fett was introduced in the second movie of the original trilogy, and not the last one, and in the second movie he actually did shit before, just being killed off randomly and underwhelmingly. Like, oh my gosh. They're worse than Boba Fett, oh my gosh. Anyway. Another thing about this movie. General Hux. Oh, gosh. And we thought Captain Phasma was wasted. Seriously, like, what was the deal with this guy? Like, in the first movie of this trilogy, like, he was introduced as this, like, he didn't really do a ton, but he was introduced as, this super, like, crazy guy saying, oh, how we will genocide all the worlds and, like, be the supreme oppressors and stuff like that. And he was being pretty crazy. Then in the eighth movie, he kind of sort of got relegated to some comic relief, which honestly, parts of it definitely were funny, but it definitely seemed as though he was going to have more significance in this whole story. Like, the last movie was setting it up, so basically, he was someone who was loyal to the old supreme leader of the First Empire, and the last movie was setting it up to where basically he would have a lot of conflict with Kylo Ren, and they would eventually come head-to-head in some sorts. And then, in this movie, I guess that happens, where apparently he's just a traitor to the First Order and is helping the Resistance because, as he said, I don't want you to win, but I want Kylo Ren to lose. I guess he's that petty. And then he just dies. Like, honestly, like, I will say, he was wasted as a character, but I did not laugh that much throughout this movie, but I laughed so hard at that scene where the Palpatine loyalist guy suspects him of treachery and then just immediately shoots him. That scene was fucking hilarious. And I also do like that guy. Like he barely got any screen time or focus in this movie, but General Pride, he was actually a joy to watch in this movie. Like but seriously, General Hux was so fucking wasted. Like I don't even understand. Like it's just all these characters being so fucking wasted, like not really doing anything, and like introducing a bunch of plot threads in this movie that like you didn't need to introduce because you had already set up all this shit in the last movie that you didn't fulfill upon. Like it's just, I gotta check if this thing is still recording. By the way, yeah, it is. Okay, just had to check because sometimes my phone does bad poopy things. Anyway, another thing about this movie, why are there so many plot contrivances in this movie? Like, seriously, I can list so many examples. They sink into quicksand in the desert and just immediately find what they're looking for. Rey can use force healing. What? Like, oh man, if Anakin only knew that the secret to saving people's lives was so easy using the force, maybe he wouldn't have slaughtered all those younglings. Rey just finds the power to, and other characters like Ben, I guess, and maybe Leia. I don't know what happened with her death, but people just find the ability to heal people and save their lives easily. Like, it was a big plot point that Anakin was trying to find how to do that in the prequel trilogy. Apparently it's just so easy, anyone can do it. And like other plot contrivances, like, Luke's X-Wing still works fine despite being drowned in the sea for years. Like, I complimented The Last Jedi, the last movie, on having, like, some people would say, oh, it would be better if Luke would just show up and, fight all the members of the First Order like he joked about. Like, and I was saying, like, and I was saying when he actually did show up on the battlefield, like, oh, how the fuck did he get there? Like, his X-Wing had been drowned in the ocean. Like, it's so ridiculous. And then you actually realize, oh, he didn't get there. And that makes so much sense. Like, he was using the Force to project an image of himself. Because, of course, how would he get there with his, like, drowned X-Wing and get it working so fast? But then, apparently, in this movie, like, they do the thing that I complimented the last movie for not doing. And it's just, oh my gosh, like, how... plot contrivances out of the wazoo, and he just lifts it out of the water so Rey can use it, and and apparently the Sith dagger somehow has an outline of the wreckage of the first Death Star where the second Wayfinder is. Somehow, how that doesn't even make any sense. And just so many fucking plot contrivances in this movie, like, just, and Lowart, who basically is content creator. I don't know if you know him, but Lowart, he basically did a review of this movie where he said, basically, I agree with him what he said, where a few plot contrivances and conveniences in a movie or show, okay, you can accept that, because sometimes contrivances do happen in real life. But when there's just one plot contrivance after another plot contrivances, and again, 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 like the scene where, Poe is talking to his old flame, and he just gives him exactly what he needs to get to where they're going. Like, it's just contrivance after contrivance after contrivance after contrivance after contrivance after contrivance. Just, it gets, like, it's just, things are happening because the plot demands that they happen, and it's just like, it just gets so tiring, and I'm not invested because I know that, like, every time they need to do something, like, there's just gonna be a contrivance to get them to where they need to go, and, like, there's just no work that the characters actually have to go through to accomplish things, because contrivances just do all the work for them to get the story resolved. Oh my gosh. Okay. Alright, let's get to Finn's character arc. There isn't one. He just shouts people's names throughout the entire movie. Rey! 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 Seriously, like, oh my gosh. What the fuck was he gonna tell Rey, by the way? Like, seriously. They set it up in this movie, like, oh, Rey, I have something to tell you. And then, by the end of the movie, he just doesn't tell her. What the fuck? Like, oh my gosh. Like, why the fuck would you... Why the fuck would you set something up as, oh, he had something really important to tell Rey, and then he never fucking tells her? Like, what the fuck? Was he gonna tell her that he loved her, or that he had Force powers, or that Rey was a Palpatine, even though how was he supposed to fucking know that? Like, what was it? Why would you set something up and then not have it pay off? What the fuck? There's just so much about this movie, and this whole saga that, like, it sets up so much that it never pays off. Like, what the fuck? And seriously, like, in regards to Finn's character, like, his character was so fucking wasted. It feels like he's a side character in this movie, barely has anything to do, and he was so interesting in the first movie. Like, you know, like, he was this character who, you know, he's the type of character we haven't really seen, or at least in the movies we haven't seen yet. You know, he's someone who was part of this evil empire, and then he, you know, turned against them, and, you know, there were so many interesting directions to go with his character, and I feel like, you know, in the last movie, he was underutilized, but here he was so underutilized. Like, he should have played a super big part in, you know, in the story of the saga, like, him going through an entire character arc. Like, maybe he could have, you know, found some way to try to, take out the First Order from within, like, trying to, recruit the, you know, First Order soldiers who were, you know, like him, all brainwashed, so he sees the humanity of them and tries to get a lot of them out of the situation where they're in. And that could have been, like, a whole character arc for him, but instead, I guess it relegates him to finding this character who used to be part of the, you know, this girl who used to be part of the First Order, who, I guess, she's his romantic love interest now, the third one that's been introduced, maybe, I don't know, but whatever the fuck, he just meets this girl who used to be from the First Order, and they bond over it for a good minute, and I guess that's it. I guess that's all the creators of this franchise, you know, thought was necessary for him to be an interesting character, but it's not, because he should have been much more important and actually done stuff, and there should have been more character moments with him, and, like, this girl who used to be a stormtrooper, that she should have been a more important character too. Like, why was she just relegated to, like, it just, he feels like a fucking side character in this movie, when in the first movie, in episode 7, he was introduced as a main character. Like, why is he a side character? I don't, Finn was so fucking wasted, oh my gosh. Anyway, Poe's character arc, you know, I don't know, like, honestly, I wasn't too big a fan of, like, Poe's character in the last movie, like, his conflict, where, like, I don't know, I don't feel like it was set up in episode 7, where Poe was, like, this, you know, renegade who was just going against orders. Like, you know, he was talked about as if he was, like, this, you know, resistance hero, and then then in episode 8, he had this whole character arc that kind of came out of nowhere, with him, like, turning against the, you know, him turning against the resistance and trying to stage mutiny and stuff, and it just seemed kind of strange to me, and I get what they were trying to say in the last movie with him trying to, you know, understand what it really means to be leadership, but the conflict in the last movie with him just felt like it could have been handled much better, and in this movie, like, I don't know, I mean, like, you know, I just don't feel like Poe was really changed all that much from the last movie. Like, the first thing is, like, he goes on this... The first thing is, like, in the last movie, his whole character arc was him trying to be, you know, he needs to learn what it really means to lead. But he doesn't really do that in this movie. He just goes off on a random side quest, Macguffin quest, with, you know, Rey and all the other people who've been relegated to side characters. And, like... You know, and apparently he goes back to his old flame, and, like, they reminisced on, you know, what he used to be, like, you know, being smugglers and shit. I don't even remember what his backstory was. It was really uninteresting, and, like, it, you know, if you're going to, again, it's just things that were introduced in the last movie, like his character arc of, you know, becoming this leader and becoming more responsible and less of a hothead and trying to think through things. I don't really feel like it was, you know, built upon in this movie. Like, and again, he wasn't really even that important in the first place. Like, a lot of the characters who used to be more important have just kind of been relegated to side characters, and, you know, Poe's most important, no, sorry, yeah, Poe's most important character arc in this movie was basically just delivering the genius screenwriting line of, oh, somehow Palpatine returned. Like, you know, honestly, his character wasn't quite as mangled as Finn's in this movie, but he definitely, he definitely should have been more utilized if they were going to make him, if they were going to give him this character arc in the last movie. But anyway, another thing about this movie, Rey's family. Remember how in The Last Jedi it was revealed that Rey's parents were actually filthy junk traders? Truly a brilliant subversion of expectations that showed that, even if you aren't born into a super special lineage, you can still rise above your past and carve out your own future. Nah, just kidding. Silly Ryan Johnson. Rey Skywalker. Rey Palpatine. Silly Ryan Johnson. No, seriously, it just... what I told you about your parents coming from nothing was true from a certain point of view. Gosh. I don't like this movie's twist that Rey was actually a Palpatine this entire time. First of all, it makes no fucking sense. It wasn't built up to at all. Like, Luke's reaction to apparently he knew who Rey was the entire time, even though when Rey came to his little planet island thingy in the last movie, he did not seem like he knew who Rey was. But now it's being retconned where, he actually did know who Rey was and still decided to train her, even though she was a Palpatine. And Luke was, so afraid of teaching his nephew, a Skywalker, that, he'll actually, take in a Palpatine to try to study the Force on his island. It made no sense. And again, it's just this effort to, it's just, this entire movie is one big effort to try to rewrite everything that, almost everything that Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi. And I know a lot of people were not super big fans of The Last Jedi, and, they weren't super big fans of a twist that many people thought was a letdown, that, Rey's parents were actually no one. Way to go, what a brilliant twist. But, It was, in my opinion. It was a good direction to take the story in and to take Rey's character in, because, it's just, her entire thing was trying to find, I was born from nothing, but, I have this feeling that, I'm someone special, and I want to know who my parents were. And then you find out, her parents were nobodies. They were filthy junk traders who abandoned her. And that's a good plot point for a character, because it gives her so much more development, like her trying to find out who she is in everything, and trying to realize that, even though her parents were no one, that doesn't mean she has to be. And the Force, the Force calls to people, remember how, even if it was kind of bullshit in episode 1, where basically, Anakin was the son of basically, a slave, and even though they gave the whole virgin birth bullshit Jesus story, it was cool that, Anakin's lineage was basically, slaves, and he came from nothing, in the end. And that, but even that, he was so powerful to be, the chosen one, and all that kind of stuff. But again, in this movie, it's revealed that, Rey was really a Palpatine the entire time, and she was connected to a super powerful Force lineage, and it's just really... It did not sit right with me. It really got on my nerves. And, it... gosh. Rey Skywalker. And then at the end, of course, she says, somewhere in this movie she says, I'm Rey, just Rey. And then in the end of the movie she says, no, I'm actually Rey Skywalker. It's undoing everything that pretty much all the plot lines that The Last Jedi set up, which really doesn't sit right with me. You made a decision to... This was the reveal of who Rey's parents were. They were nobodies, and I feel like they should have committed to that, and it's just really silly and ridiculous to introduce it, Rey is secretly Palpatine. By the way, what was up with Rey's parents? Were her parents even important at all, other than just being, Palpatines? Maybe you could have given some more insight as to, who they actually were, and why they decided to go against what their father Palpatine and who the fuck Palpatine fucked. I mean, I don't. It just so much was unexplained about this whole Palpatine thing. Like, again, because it wasn't set up in the last movie. It just wasn't like this. If they were going to make Rey a Palpatine, okay, maybe that might be kind of interesting. But you already gave an answer as to, you know, who her parents were, kind of. I mean, not really, but, you know, you already gave an answer as to who her parents were in the last movie. And now you're giving a different answer, and, like, but it's a much more complicated answer that raises a lot more questions than them just being filthy junk traders. So the audience is meant to speculate as to, okay, well then, oh, Reys Palpatine, this like brings up so many questions in my head that the movie just doesn't explain. Like, you had a satisfying, maybe not satisfying, but good for the story and good for Rey's character answer in the last movie, and now you're just introducing an entirely new lineage for her that just was not set up. It's just ridiculous. Oh gosh. And another thing. So, regarding the disregarding the twist for a minute, Rey is really incredibly boring in this movie. Like, I honestly think that Rey, when she was first introduced in the when she was first introduced in episode 7, she was a really good character, in my opinion. Like, she was just this person who was trying to find, you know, who she was, and she obviously had a lot of abilities, but she was very resourceful. She was very, you know, witty in trying to solve things. And I just found her journey to be very interesting in the first movie, and she was very compelling. But then in this movie, I just didn't really, you know, find her interesting. I mean, I feel like the entire thing was just kind of playing out, you know, old plot lines and introducing new ones that weren't really good for her character. And then, of course, there was that bullshit where, you know, clickbait, where basically there was that scene of, you know, evil Rey, ha ha ha, she's gonna turn evil. Even though, you know, there's never a doubt in my mind that she was going to stay good in this movie, because, you know, she never legitimately struggled with... She never legitimately struggles with the dark side in this movie in ways that are going to convince me that, oh, there was really a chance she might turn to the dark side after all. Like, oh my gosh. I just wasn't interested in her character in this movie. Like, there were no real... scenes with her where the movie just slowed down to give her really interesting character development. She had very brief scenes with Leia, which of course you kind of had to do because, you know, obviously Carrie Fisher's death, which of course very tragic. But like her character, it just was not that interesting to me in the movie. And like the ending where she defeats Palpatine and stuff, like where she becomes all the Jedi, like didn't it didn't seem very earned to me. And again, another thing I have, you know, take real issue with is the fact that, like, I don't know, it just seemed like she gained, and because again, I used to like Rey as a character. I thought she was pretty cool, but in the end, they just didn't really do that many interesting things with her in this movie. They had her gain, like, all these random powers, like, you know, force healing somehow, which she was able to use, and, like, you know, there was that scene with, I don't know, I feel like there were just so many interesting directions that you could have taken with Rey's character, but you just send her on this Macguffin quest to find these artifacts for, like, how powerful would it have been if, like, Rey actually did accidentally use the Force Lightning and actually did kill Chewie, and she would have had to deal with the consequences of you know, doing that, and have to really look introspectively at herself, and you know, that she just killed someone who was her dear friend that, like, was really helpful to her and close to her. Like, how powerful would that plotline have been if she actually did kill Chewie? But no, she didn't. And, like, there aren't really super interesting stuff like that done with her character in this movie that I think could have been... She's just relatively bland and uninteresting, in my opinion. I mean, it's just complete waste of her character that I just think could have been so much more interesting in this movie. Also, where the fuck was Rose? Like, I mean, again, I keep saying this. I know a lot of people weren't too fond of her in The Last Jedi. Like, a lot of people weren't too fond of a lot of things in The Last Jedi. But, like, she was, you know, a relatively important and major character in that movie. And, like, to just completely relegate her to a side character that basically gets almost no lines, her relationship with Finn, which I wasn't too fond of in the last movie in the first place. But like her relationship with Finn is just completely dropped, unexplored. Like you just. You know, the funny thing about it is, like, Rose's character, like, a lot of people were complaining about her in the last movie. Oh, fuck Rose. Like, she was so terrible. And, I wasn't the biggest fan of her either. Like, I think she had some good moments, but overall, I think her character, like, wasn't utilized very well in the last movie. And that whole subplot with them going to Cannabite and all that stuff, I didn't really care for it. But, like, here's the thing. Here's what you do with a character that is very disliked. You make them... Like, you make them more interesting, and you develop them more. Like, you don't just write out a character that was disliked and built up to be important. Because, like, then it even makes it more pointless. Because, okay, so Rose basically does jack shit in this movie. Then that makes that makes her scenes and her character in The Last Jedi even worse. Because, like, it ended up being totally pointless in the end. So it retroactively makes her role in The Last Jedi worse. Because it wasn't building her up for anything. Because her character didn't do jack shit in this movie. It's like, oh my gosh, if fans didn't like how she was handled, then maybe you could, like, do things with her character to make her more interesting, more important to the story, and give her an interesting arc that is good to follow, rather than, because you can do that. Like, you can do that with writing. You can take characters that were unpopular and make them more popular by, giving them interesting writing and interesting things to do. Like, there's tons of examples of, doing that in the past. Like, it just gets really lazy, and feels like, the creators were caving to peer pressure. People didn't like this character, and there was a bunch of outrage about her, and now she's non-existent, basically, in this movie. It's really lazy. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it, but it's just still stupid. So, Kylo Ren is the best character in this movie, by far, as he has been in, he's been the best character in all the sequel, movies, and yet he has completely inconsistent motivations and just ends up dying with Rey reacting sad for, like, 4 seconds before promptly moving on. Oh my gosh, Benny boy. Like, he's the best character in this movie, but he still isn't really a good character. Like, again, I talked about it before, but, his whole character arc in the last movie was him basically being second fiddle to the main bad guy, and then, as a surprise, killing the main bad guy, and then becoming the main bad guy, and in this movie, he was supposed to be, the giant force and the big leader that the Resistance was fighting again. And that could have been a really interesting direction. Because, we haven't seen that before. Like, in the original trilogy and in the prequel trilogy, Palpatine was obviously the big main bad guy. And, Darth Vader and Anakin, as cool as he was always going to be second fiddle to, Emperor Palpatine. And, it would have been really cool to see, because, in the, in Empire Strikes Back, Vader was talking about, we will kill Palpatine, we will rule the universe as father and son, and, like, that honestly would have been really cool to actually see Vader do that, but of course he doesn't, because, as soon as he kills Palpatine, he dies, and it would have been really cool to take that, opportunity of, like, fan fiction about, but interesting fan fiction, really compelling fan fiction about, like, Vader, destroying his master, and then ruling the universe in his way. And it would have been really interesting to see how Kylo Ren would actually lead the First Order as a younger and less experienced, more brash person, and how that might affect the story. But no, apparently not, because you have to introduce Palpatine for him to play second fiddle to the main villain again, which just makes him infinitely less interesting. Basically, doing the same plotline as the Last Jedi, and his character, like, and again, he just has very inconsistent motivations that I couldn't really tell what was going on inside his head, where, even though, when in the last two movies, I could tell very clearly, what he was trying to do, what his motivations are. Like, he goes from, I'm gonna conquer the galaxy by myself, and then he goes to, hey, this, Palpatine guy, he's pretty swag, and, I might want, to use all his ships and stuff, so I'll work with him now, and capture Rey, and then, he just goes to immediately, after Rey heals him, he immediately just, he sees a scene with he sees a vision of his dead father, and then he just goes to immediately help Rey. Oh my gosh! And that scene, by the way, that was a good scene. By the way, that was a really good scene with him and his father. But that it was just so dumb that he threw away his lightsaber into the ocean. Like, Ben, maybe you could have used that when you were going to the Sith planet of Exegol and fighting the Knights of Ren. Like, oh yeah, let me just chuck this lightsaber into the sea because I don't need it, except I do because I'm going to a Sith planet where there's a bunch of baddies that I'm supposed to fight. Like, dude, if Rey hadn't helped you out there with that force teleportation, it would have been seriously bad for you, bro. I'm serious. Like, that was really dumb move. But yeah, I mean, Ben Solo, who's been the most interesting character in all the in all the sequel movies, and I found his character incredibly compelling, especially in The Last Jedi, which is where I felt his development was really going places, and they just didn't really go any of those places in this movie. But, Adam Driver is still a fantastic actor, and he still did a good job with this movie, and I was still, I wasn't, his character, Kylo Ren, was still the most interesting character in this movie, but was also really badly written. So, yeah, and then he just dies. He just fucking dies. Like, Rey is there defeating Palpatine basically all by herself, and, Kylo is basically has fallen down a hole, and then just gives his life for Rey, and I guess Reylo was the thing this entire time, I don't know. But, yeah, Kylo Ren could have been handled much, much, much better, and considering he was my favorite character in this sequel trilogy, and they just pretty much wasted him in this movie, was not a fan. Alright, Maz Kanata, what the fuck was her deal? Like, seriously, like, I really liked Maz Kanata, like, in Episode 7. I thought she had a very entertaining personality, and there was just a lot of mystery about her, like, what was her deal, how did she get Luke's lightsaber? None of that has ever gone on over. Like, I said this, I didn't say this, because I didn't record myself reviewing The Last Jedi, but I didn't like how, in The Last Jedi, her character was just like, oh, there was one random scene with her where they were talking to her on the hologram, and she was, like, doing whatever the fuck she was doing, I don't know. And in this scene, she's also relegated to a complete background character that has no significance to plot. Like, what was her deal? Like, why did she know all this stuff about, like, the Jedi and the Sith and stuff? Like, there was a lot of mystery and intrigue about her character, and there's just, like, none of that gets explored. We don't know who she is, like, where she comes from, anything about that. Like, it's just, I guess she was really not an important character in the first place, but it kind of seemed like she was in the first, in Episode 7, and they just didn't do anything with her, and, just kind of annoying, if you ask me, and I think there was a lot more potential they could have done with the character, but they just wrote it out of the story, I guess. Whatever. Anyway, another problem I have with this movie is it just, like, there's nothing inherently wrong with having nostalgia, but the entire movie just seems to bank on nostalgia, and there's just not that much original about it. Like I've said, you've already heard me talk about it before, but a lot of the plot lines in this movie, they just seem to be retreadings of older plot lines that were either done in the original movies or were done already in this trilogy, and like what I feel like happened was, Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi, he was trying to do something different, and he was trying to do something new, and, like, and don't get me wrong, The Last Jedi was far from perfect, but at least it was trying to do something different, and trying to take the characters and the story in a new direction that we really hadn't seen before, and, in my opinion, it had some really phenomenal stuff in it, The Last Jedi did, and I was excited to see how the story would carry forward, but it didn't, and pretty much every plot thread introduced in The Last Jedi, it was just dropped in this movie. It wasn't expanded upon. Like, I get it, okay? People weren't super huge fans. A lot of people were angry at how The Last Jedi turned out, but when creating another movie, it should at least, like, follow through on the plot lines that were set up in the last movie. Like, Rian Johnson, like, say what you will about Rian Johnson's movie, like, sure, he might have gone in different directions than J.J. Abrams would have went in if he was directing The Last Jedi, but, you can still watch you can still watch Episode 7, The Force Awakens, and then watch The Last Jedi and see it as, okay, these movies, yes, they do continue, they do continue from each other. They are, even though they do feel very different, okay, there was one movie, and then it continues into the next movie. This movie does not feel like a continuation of The Last Jedi at all. It feels like they dropped pretty much every single plotline that was introduced, in The Last Jedi, and introduced a bunch of new ones that hadn't been set up at all in the last movie. And it's just like, it banked so much on nostalgia, like, even when there was no real substance behind it. I already talked about Lando, bringing him back. Like, sure, if you're gonna do it, fine, but have him actually be interesting, like you did with Han. Like, Han played a super big part in Episode 7, and I guess that could be banking on nostalgia, because of course a lot of people love Han, and he's an iconic Star Wars character, but he actually had a lot of really interesting stuff to do in The Force Awakens, and like Lando didn't in this movie. And there were just so many nostalgia moments in this movie that just didn't really have a ton of substance to it. Like, a Jedi's weapon deserves more respect. Like, yeah, you didn't like it how in the last movie Luke threw his lightsaber off the cliff, even though in I don't understand why so many people were pissed off about that scene in the first place, by the way, in The Last Jedi, where Luke tosses his lightsaber off the cliff. Like, you realize in Episode 6, Return of the Jedi, Luke tosses his lightsaber off the balcony in the Death Star. Like, he just throws it away. Like, oh, Jedi's weapon is worth more respect. I don't think so. Not from your fucking example, Luke. But yeah, I mean, and the other thing that really annoys me is, like, I don't feel like the characters in this in this story had much agency on their own. Like, it just seems like this entire movie, by this point, it was just banking on a lot of the efforts of the protagonists and antagonists of, the original trilogy. One of the things I liked about the prequels, and I know, it's a sin to say you liked something about the prequels. I mean, I guess maybe not now, because nowadays everyone's saying, the prequels were, like, so great, and at least they were better than these garbage sequels that are coming out, like, hypocrites. But anyway, one of the things I liked about the prequels was that it was focusing on a lot of new characters. Obviously there were people like Anakin, Palpatine, and Obi-Wan, who obviously were in the original trilogy. But one of the things I liked about the prequels was that it introduced a lot of new characters that were very important that we didn't see in the originals. And I like that, because it wasn't just totally banking on nostalgia and for the originals. And I don't have a problem with introducing the characters from the original films in these films, because of course it makes sense, because it's really only 30 years after those films. Obviously a lot of the characters would still be alive, but I just don't understand why even introduce these new characters if the old characters are really going to play such an incredibly big role. And, like, rather than the actual main characters of these movies that the films have and the trilogy has been setting up, like gathering forces for the Resistance, instead it's just Lando who basically gathers the entire fleet armada to defeat the Final Order on Exegol. And, like, it's just, and of course Luke, he appears as Force Ghost, and he's the one who gives Rey the motivation to go back and defeat Palpatine. And Palpatine came back rather than Ben Solo being the main villain of this movie. It's an older villain that was focused on in the original trilogy, who came back. So it's just focusing so much on these older characters who we should be giving more time to focus on the newer characters and build up their arcs. Because, like, I understand a lot of people wanted, we want a sequel to Star Wars, we want all the characters that were in the original films. Okay, if you want to do that, but if you want to make a film trilogy with new characters, then you have to focus a lot and put the main focus on those new characters, and not just bank on nostalgia and all these old characters. And just really got on my nerves. And of course, how could I forget to mention the Justice for Wookiee, because look, Chewie finally got his medal because he didn't get it in the first movie, in the fourth movie, I guess, in A New Hope, but now he finally got it. Oh, yay. Oh, Chewie got his medal. Oh, my gosh. That scene just fucking annoyed me. Just, and, you know, like, of course, obviously, The Force Awakens and even The Last Jedi, you know, did bank on nostalgia somewhat, but, you know, it was more integrated into the plot and felt more natural, whereas this movie, it just seems to be saying, oh, look at these things, remember these things, oh, remember these plot lines, and oh, you know, nostalgia, remember this from your childhood and how good it was here, but it's still good here, so, you know, watch it, because even though we don't really have anything of substance to add in this movie, but, you know, nostalgia, yay, whatever. So another thing that I have a problem with in this movie is, there were really I don't really think there were any emotional scenes that really tugged at my heartstrings. Like, you know, I mean, C-3PO, like, he has this big moment where he's going to sacrifice his memory and be gone, where, you know, in order for them to decode the Sith language, in order to, you know, complete their all-important MacGuffin quest, you know, he's going to lose his memory, but he doesn't, and he's fine, and, you know, R2 is able to get his memory back, and then Chewie, oh no, Chewie's dead, oh my gosh, beloved character, they killed him off, except he wasn't, you know, killed off, he's alive, and he's fine. I mean, you know, there just seemed to be a lot of moments in this movie where it could have been more emotional, and it could have tugged at your heartstrings, but, like, you know, Disney wanted to play it more safe. No, you know, you can't have these big emotional moments. We'll just fake you out into thinking that it is, to have a, you know, to have a cheap shot, but not really, you know, leave any kind of emotional impact. And, like, even the scenes that were supposed to be really sad and, like, heartbreaking, like, none of them were as impactful as, like, for example, you know, Han's death in, Episode 7 was, where, like, for example, when Leia died in this movie, I was just honestly kind of confused as to what was happening. Like, did she die of old age? Did she die because she was using the Force to reach out to, Ben, which killed her, or honestly, like, apparently using the Force extensively can kill you now. Like, apparently that's the thing, because I was really confused in, honestly, The Last Jedi, where Luke just dies, and I was really confused where he died there too, which really ruined some of the emotional impact for me there too, because I was just really confused, like, oh, why the fuck would he die? Like, was it because he used too much Force to project an image of himself? Was that, like, a life-threatening thing that, like, apparently using the Force too much can kill you in this series, I guess, which was never something that was introduced, and honestly not something I'm too fond of, but whatever. But yeah, maybe you know, Leia died because she was using too much Force to talk to Kylo a million miles away, or maybe was she the one who gave her life to save Kylo from the lightsaber stab, or was that Rey healing him? I don't fucking know. Like, I was just confused by Leia's death. Like, it happened out of place for me. It didn't really seem like it was building up to this. Obviously, you know, with Carrie Fisher being dead, you kind of were limited in what you can do. But, like, her death scene, like, it wasn't, like, super sad or emotional for me. I was just confused for it. And, like, you know, and oh my gosh, Kylo's death scene, you know, Ben's death scene, I guess. Oh, you know, Rey dies, but oh no, she's not actually dead because she's being brought back to life by Kylo, but then he dies immediately afterwards. Wow, like, just, she dies, then no, he's sad and kisses her, and, like, she's back to life again because he gave her life, and then he's dead, and then, I just found it kind of funny, in my opinion, Ben's death. It was just like, it was supposed to be, oh, serious, oh no, oh, Ben's dead, oh, what a shame. If only the characters like Rey would actually give it, like, more than 5 seconds to actually react sadly. It seemed like she wasn't really affected by his death at all. But, like, you know, his, Rey was a lot more impacted by, like, what's his face, Han's death than she was, Kylo's death, like, in the end, and I just found his death scene kind of funny in the end, rather than, oh, super tragic, oh, he's dead now, but, yeah, anyway, there just weren't any emotional scenes that I really got invested in this movie. I couldn't think of a single one, except for maybe that scene where, you know, Kylo was talking to his father, but even then, you know, that wasn't, even then, like, just, it didn't have any of the same emotional impact that scenes from any of the other movies of this, any of the other movies of this franchise have had. And I didn't get emotionally invested in it. I didn't really care what was happening, because, like, they weren't going to make these they weren't going to make these risky decisions by killing off beloved characters like Chewie, and they weren't going to have C-3PO's memories permanently wiped, because of course he was just back, I guess, by R2's data storage. They weren't willing to commit to anything, and they just, I really wasn't emotionally invested. I just wasn't, and part of it is too that, like, this movie is so focused on, like, going from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene, because it just doesn't really give the characters time to breathe and chill out and have actual scenes of character growth and development and really emotional scenes. So that's a problem, of course. Palpatine acted like a dumbass in this movie. He did not have any consistent motivations. Like, I think they brought him back in this movie, but he just didn't really have his brain. Like, he wants Rey to kill him so that Rey can be possessed by his spirit and he can come back. But then why the fuck would Rey kill him if he told her to kill him? Like, oh, hey, you kill me, and like, you kill me and I will possess you. So why the fuck would you tell her that? Why couldn't you just have her, like, oh, you think you can kill me? Oh, you think you can kill me? Haha, you'll never kill me. And then she kills her, and then she kills him, and then, he possesses him. Why would he tell her to kill him if he wanted her to kill him? Like, that makes no sense. It's so dumb. And then, like, oh, yeah, and also, if Palpatine wanted Rey alive so he could possess her or whatever, like, why the fuck would she ask Kylo Ren to kill her? Why? It makes no sense. Why would he ask Kylo Ren to kill her if she wanted her alive? Like, she didn't know that Kylo was going to, like, fail to kill her or just decide not to kill her. Like, he didn't know that. Why the fuck would you just... It makes no sense. Why wouldn't you tell Kylo Ren, like, oh, you must bring her back alive to me because I need her or something, and that, why wouldn't he tell her that, tell Kylo that? And, like, the Force dyad, apparently, rather than possessing Rey, he takes the power of the Force dyad, I guess, to gain powers, like, by absorbing the life suck energy, love energy of Kylo Ren and Rey, and his motivations change so much throughout the entire movie. And one of the things I loved so much about the prequel trilogy was that Palpatine was just, like, a scheming, conniving asshole in that movie who just, like, planned so much of the shit out for him to, like, gain power. And, like, he was in the original trilogy, Palpatine, he was portrayed as this, like, super evil and manipulative guy, but in the prequel trilogy, we really got to see the extent of, how cunning and how smart he was, and how well he planned things out for him to gain power from basically just becoming a humble senator from Naboo to ruling over the entire galaxy, and how intelligent he was in this. But, like, that entire aspect of his character, like the cunning, the manipulation, the intelligence, it's just completely thrown out the window in this movie. So he's not he's not the Palpatine we know him as. They brought him back without his brain, is basically what it is. He was brought back, but he's a shell of his former self. He has no brain, it's an empty skull, and he's just, he's possessed by, he was trying to possess Rey, but he was possessed by the shitty writers to do what they told him so that the plot could be resolved, and, oh gosh, why, it's just, and the thing is, I love Palpatine. Like, he is my favorite villain in the whole franchise. Yes, more than Vader. More than Vader. I like him more than Vader. And, like, I was honestly, even though, I was kind of iffy about, oh, you're really going to bring him back? Like, oh, I was kind of interested to see what Kylo was going to do as the main villain. But, oh, it could be interesting because I really like Palpatine and I would be interested to see what would happen if they brought him back. But, no, he wasn't interesting. They kind of butchered his character in this movie, and I didn't... Really not a fan of how they handled Palpatine. Gotta see if this is still recording. Alright, then we have Reylo. Kill me. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, honestly, I did not like the ship. When I saw it, people were saying after the Last Jedi came out, oh my gosh, Reylo is canon. Like Kylo and Ben and Rey, they were gonna get together. And I don't know. I didn't see it that way when I first watched the Last Jedi. I didn't really see their connection as romantic, but and again, so that's why in this movie it kind of just came out of left field when they're just they're kissing. Wow, this just came completely out of nowhere. Like, where did this come from? But then, as I thought about it, I actually kind of warmed up to the idea of Reylo, and I thought it actually could be pretty interesting because throughout this franchise you always see the conflict is it's between brothers, like Anakin and Obi-Wan. Their conflict was between brothers. And in the original trilogy, it's the conflict is between father and son. And we haven't really seen a major conflict between, two people that are lovers. It's a relationship, well, I mean, I guess it was Anakin and, Padme, but that was sort of different context. But we haven't really seen that kind of thing where the main theme is, basically lovers going against each other. And I think that after remarking on it, I think that could be an interesting idea, but it was not built up in this movie. Like, they go from Kylo Ren basically being obsessed with her and getting her to join him, and then she stabs him and then heals him, and then they go to fight Palpatine, and then he just kisses her. I don't know, I feel like it came very out of left field for me for them to just be in a romantic relationship. I feel like it should have been built up, a lot more, and it just came very out of nowhere for me. And I also feel like it just makes Kylo Ren's motivations even more confusing, because it just makes me question, was he trying to find Rey and have her join him because he was in love with him, or because he wanted him join him to, conquer the galaxy and whatever. And it just made it. It was very confusing to me. I wish that they would have been much more clear and given more actual development to their relationship if they were setting up for this, because it just. There's a reason why it came completely out of nowhere for me, because I feel like even though maybe there were hints that they had a romantic connection, just it was not developed very much in this movie, and it just came out of nowhere for me. And I feel like it could have been an interesting idea, but again, this movie, the writers are not too great on this movie, so it could have been interesting, but it really wasn't, and it just kind of came out of left field for me. What was that resolution? Seriously, how the fuck did Lando get all those ships there? Seriously, how the fuck did Lando get all those bajillion ships there? Seriously, it makes no sense. The entire first hour of this movie was them trying to find a way to get to Exegol. The entire first hour of this movie was just completely wasted on them trying to go on this MacGuffin quest to try to find a way to get to Exegol. And then apparently Lando could just, get a bunch of, a million bajillion ships there, all at once, by the way, from all over the entire galaxy, over the span of, hours, to defeat the massive fleet. How the fuck did he do that? It was complete Deus Ex Machina, how Lando basically resolved the conflict and got all those ships there. This entire movie, should have been, if they were going to go with that ending, it should have been them trying to gather. What should have happened is they should have known, if they were going to go with this plot of this movie, and even if they weren't, this movie should have been about them trying to gather forces for the Resistance to fight back against the First Order, or in this case, the Final Order. But it wasn't. Lando just did everything off screen and got all those people saying, but there are more of us, Poe. There are more of us. Really? There are more of us. Really? Is that why that those more of us haven't come to the Resistance aid at any point in the last movie, or in this movie? They just all suddenly come randomly to attack when Lando Calrissian gets them. How? I get the message they were trying to go for. you know, even like the captains of the Imperial Starfleet say, oh, those aren't really like military cruisers, they're just people coming to help. Like, the message that they were trying to get in this movie was that, oh, normal people can rise up against tyranny, and like the tyrannical masters, there's a lot less of them than like the normal regular folks in the galaxy. But like, that should have been shown. That should have been fucking shown. You shouldn't have Lando just getting all those people riled up to fight the Final Order and all those starships at the end of the movie. Like, you need to show this. You need to show the galaxy rising up against the First Order, but no, that's not what happened. Instead, Lando just comes Deus Ex Machina at the end of the movie, just gathering all that massive fleet of, people to come and attack randomly out of nowhere, and it felt so incredibly unearned. And real original, Rey deflects Palpatine's lightning with, gasp! 2 lightsabers? Again, Palpatine's brain being completely broken. Why the fuck wouldn't he just stop shooting lightning at her if she was deflecting it? I mean, I guess he did do that in Revenge of the Sith, but at least he didn't fucking die in that movie. At least it didn't have any severe negative consequences that him getting his lightning deflected. And at least that had a point where he was, trying to convince Anakin to help him and stuff. But like in this movie, Palpatine got defeated by like his own fault because he was shooting lightning at Rey, and she just deflected it at him, which could have been stopped if he just stopped shooting lightning at her. Oh my gosh, it's so dumb. Oh my gosh. And space horses, yes, space horses are the key to everything. Oh, the climax of this movie was so fucking dumb, and it was trying to be so big and epic and satisfying, and it just wasn't, because it wasn't built up. It was a stupid Deus Ex Machina ending that wasn't built up to at all. And like Rey's whole, I am all the Jedi, and the force of the light side and all the Jedi is flowing through me. And it was cool, and it was cool to hear like old characters' voices, including like people who, like Ahsoka Tano. We heard her voice, who wasn't even in the movies. It was cool to hear her voice. So and it was a bit of fan service, and I would have liked it if that moment was built up to more rather than just coming out of nowhere because the plot demands that, she wins, so we'll have all the forces of all the Jedi flowing through her to defeat the Emperor, and 2 lightsabers, which is the key to defeating him in the reflecting lightning. It did not feel earned. The climax of this movie, it was trying to be so big and epic, but it was the dumbest part of the movie, in a movie where the first hour was an entire pointless MacGuffin quest. It just, it was so disappointing. Like, oh my gosh, none of this movie feels big and epic, even though it's definitely trying to. Like, the entire first half of this movie was nothing but a glorified scavenger hunt that was pointless. So, like, the back half of this movie and the climax doesn't feel earned because it wasn't built up to it all. All the setup of this movie was just trying to get to fucking Exegol. Like, when you could have figured out how to do that within the first few minutes of the movie, like Kylo did, and then the entire rest of the movie would have them trying to, gather forces to attack. But instead, when all the forces actually come to defeat, the big fleet, like, it's just completely unearned because it wasn't set up at all. Oh my gosh, jeez. The happy endings, like, this movie had a happy ending, and, of course, because I'm sure, people didn't actually think that it was going to have this super sad ending, but I just didn't. This ending, was trying to feel all happy and stuff, but it did not feel earned. It didn't feel earned. Like, this happy ending didn't feel earned, because, the entire way they resolved the conflict was just with Deus Ex Machina and things coming out of nowhere and random bullshit invented by the writers to solve the conflict, and like just contrivance after contrivance after contrivance, and introducing this like galaxy-ending threat that would be like hundreds of times more powerful than the First Order, even though it was defeated incredibly easily in like the span of an hour. And like I forgot, at the end of this movie, everyone's feeling really good. There's a like blink and you miss it 5-second same-sex kiss between these two random Resistance, women that we that are not characters and that we never get any lines from. But hey, you know, you know, Disney, we're woke. We have this 5 second same-sex lesbian kiss that is probably just gonna easily be cut out when it gets released in homophobic countries like China. So, hey, we're progressive. Like, buy our shit because we're woke, and we have this 4 second same-sex kiss, blink and you miss it, that, is between two non-characters. Great. Fantastic LGBT representation in your movies and your franchises, Disney. Oh, applause. You deserve applause. Yes. Brilliant. Alright. So, now let's get to things I actually liked about this movie. Which, I am a harsh critic, but I am a fair critic. And I will admit when a movie that I don't particularly like and I think is complete shit actually does some things that are kind of good. So, yeah, some things that I liked about this movie. Forced teleportation is still a pretty cool addition. I like that addition of The Last Jedi, and I'm glad they didn't just scrap it like pretty much everything else that was introduced in The Last Jedi. And it actually led to some pretty cool scenes, like, for example, that it wasn't necessarily a great fight, but it was a cool scene where, it was an interesting scene in the way it was shot where, Rey and Ben were fighting from separate locations, where, they had that whole thing where Kylo was able to find out where she was through the mask that dropped when they were fighting, and that was honestly pretty cool. I liked how the force teleportation was used. The special effects are still pretty decent, good use of CGI, good use of practical effects. It still looked pretty good, in my opinion. Even though the visuals were a little uninteresting, it was still, of course, competent in many ways. Adam Driver, as I said before, still a great actor. I mean, I didn't really cringe whenever he was on screen, unlike with a lot of characters. And that scene where he imagines talking to his father was actually pretty emotional, pretty much the only emotional scene in this movie that I actually got invested in, even though I kind of had some problems with it as well. Palpatine's character was thrown into the fucking shredder, but Ian McDiarmid will still always be king, no matter how shitty the script is, and I just love the guy. And I just loved hearing his voice again on the big screen, and that was cool. And C-3PO honestly was fucking hilarious. I actually loved C-3PO in this movie. I think I might have liked C-3PO's character more than I have in any film previously. Like, he was like the only funny, enjoyable character in like the main cast, which is kind of sad, honestly. But I liked him, and like I honestly found. He had plot relevancy, obviously, and I think, it would have obviously been better and more emotional if he actually did get his memory permanently wiped, but I still found it a cool and interesting and funny and making sense plot point that, it was against he could just read the Sith language, but he couldn't tell him what it was, because, it's against my protocol to tell you, and, like, that was honestly pretty funny, and, like, I liked C-3PO in this movie. He was really fucking hilarious, and I loved his character, so... props to this movie. I mean, I honestly never really cared about C-3PO this much, but you butchered every single character in this movie, but you made C-3PO really, really cool, so that's very interesting and unexpected, but, yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't think of any other positive thing to say about this movie. It sucks, so, yeah, I'm out. No, for real, though. This movie really... Honestly, this movie... I don't want to say it because, like, it sounds really, cliche and like, oh, you're just super complaining about everything, and like, there were people who were saying, oh, The Last Jedi ruined Star Wars for me, and when people were saying that, I was saying, oh, no, come on, it didn't ruin Star Wars for me. Like, even if you didn't care for it, like, you have to at least admire the interesting directions it was taking in, and it was, and like, it didn't ruin Star Wars for you, and then. But after this movie, though, I mean, The Last Jedi, I liked The Last Jedi. I did not like this movie. This movie fucking sucked, and, I think it kind of ruined Star Wars for me. I'm serious. I'm not serious. I'm not, like, I don't want to say that because, obviously, just because this movie is bad, it doesn't make the other movies of this franchise bad. I can still, obviously, go back and rewatch Revenge of the Sith, and... Empire Strikes Back and Force Awakens, movies that I thought were pretty good. I can go back and rewatch them, and they won't be they won't really be affected by the quality of this movie, and there will still be a lot of good Star Wars content in the past that is good, and, Star Wars content in the future that was good. I thought, after watching this movie, I went on to watch Mandalorian Season 1, and it was pretty good, and, I did like the ending to the Clone Wars that was given, sort of wrapping up that series after it got canceled, and there are still good things, coming out from Star Wars. I still do like the world and stuff, but what this movie really did was, the ending to this trilogy, it made me really disinterested on anything happening in this part of the Star Wars world. Like, honestly, when I think about, like, because I love the Star Wars world, like, it's a very interesting world and mythos to exist in and tell stories about, but honestly, like, after this movie, I kind of don't really want any stories to be told, like, after the chronology of this trilogy, because, like, it's just the way it ended was, like, if you're going to tell things, and do sequels and stuff and spin-offs that take place after The Rise of Skywalker, it's just going to remind me of, like, how shitty and how ridiculous the resolution to The Rise of Skywalker was, and, like, it really ruined all interest I have of seeing things taking place chronologically after this film, because of how bad it was, and it was just so incredibly unsatisfying. So it didn't necessarily The Rise of Skywalker didn't necessarily ruin Star Wars for me, but it did get me in really a lot of a lull period where I really, before The Rise of Skywalker came out, I was really into Star Wars, and I was really into, consuming all its different facets and its different lores, and after, and I know it didn't completely, like, there's still a bunch of interesting things coming out of Star Wars, but it did really leave a bad taste in my mouth, especially this is the way you end the series off, like the epic ending to the entire franchise. It just really left a bad taste in my mouth, to where, I just can't quite enjoy Star Wars the way I used to, because, like, even though there are still obviously stuff that's come out of it that has been pretty good, this movie just left such an incredibly bad taste in my mouth that it just left me less interested in the Star Wars world than before, where it should have made me more interested in it, and it just completely ruined all interest I had in seeing anything portrayed chronologically after this movie happened. Like, I'm just completely uninterested, and I don't really care about this sequel, about this sequel story that has been crafted, because of the way it ended, and ultimately resulted in nothing really interesting. So, really disappointing in the end. Overall, I think Rise of Skywalker, I mean, it's probably the worst out of the 9. I mean, all of the other 8 at least had something interesting to offer. Like, some people say, The Rise of Skywalker may have been bad, but it wasn't as bad as The Last Jedi. That was the worst. No, it definitely wasn't. The Last Jedi had so much more going for it than this film did. So many amazing scenes, in my opinion. Some of the best stuff, actually, in the franchise in The Last Jedi, even though there were a lot of parts of that were kind of shit as well. Like, even in the prequels, like Attack of the Clones, which I see as probably the worst film, used to see as probably the worst film of the franchise, like, it had the scene with Anakin's mother dying in his arms as she was tortured and probably raped by all those Tusken Raiders. There is no scene in this movie that is as heartbreaking and emotional as that scene was. Like, all of the movies had something legitimate to offer, where, there was a reason for them that justified, in my opinion, their existence. But The Rise of Skywalker just has none of that. It's just so incredibly bland and uninteresting, and it's just, in my opinion, it has become the worst movie out of all of the 9 so far, including the spin-off movies. Like, not quite sure if it's worse than the Clone Wars animated movie, because that movie was also pretty much shit. But, I mean, the Clone Wars animated movie, at least that was that was like a spin-off movie that didn't even have a very important plot to begin with. This is the conclusion to 8 episodes of storytelling, and you couldn't even, and it's the worst out of all of them. It's just so completely shit that I have really no reason to ever return to this movie. I don't ever want to watch this movie again. I don't ever want to watch a single scene from this movie again. And that's really, really disappointing. And the issue is, like, it really didn't have to be this way. Like, the sequel trilogy, despite what some people may say, I would disagree with them, that, this sequel trilogy was given a relatively solid foundation. It just needed to not make some major missteps, which it arguably did in The Last Jedi, and it needed to expand on its story that it made in interesting ways, which it certainly did not do in this movie. This movie just... It took all the potential that this sequel franchise had, and make no mistake, I do think that it had a lot of potential with the ways that the story was going and the things that were being set up, but they completely squandered it. They dropped a bunch of plot lines that they introduced in the last movie. They just focused on this pointless MacGuffin quest, introduced all these new elements that weren't built up, and then had an incredibly unsatisfying climax and ending. And it's so disappointing because it could have been so much better. Like... Oh my gosh, there are just so many ways in which this movie could have been better. Like, it's just so ludicrous to me that this multi-million-dollar blockbuster of arguably the most successful and most famous franchise of all time was as incompetent as it was. Like, what it feels like to me that this story was like a first draft that was just scrambled together last minute because, it had to be turned in, I guess, which honestly is probably what happened with Disney trying to course correct in the span of a year and a half after the backlash The Last Jedi got. It was just... Because here's the thing, I'm a writer, like, not a professional writer, obviously, but I do writing every now and then. I know when I'm turning an assignment for college or high school, like, I know what a first draft looks like, and I know what it's like to, trying to scramble to get something done, to get it turned in on time, and so, I know what it feels like to try to bullshit your way through something and just try to get it done as fast as possible to get it in, so at least you have something to turn in, and that's exactly what this movie felt like. It felt like they were scrambling. Oh, how do we do this? Like, we need to get this out. We need to get this out. We need to get this out. But like, there was not enough time to actually, sharpen up the writing and actually make it so the script wasn't complete shit. But they didn't have that time, which is just honestly kind of sad because there could have been a really interesting story, but they were just trying to push it out. Make it to the deadline as fast as possible to get all the special effects to make it look pretty while not really caring about the story and just trying to get the acting done, get the script done, so you get it out as quickly as possible. So, that's what happened with this movie. That's what it feels like in this movie. And it feels like, this movie, even if it wasn't good, it certainly could have been better than the mess that we had gotten. If the writer, J.J. Abrams, even if he made a bad script, it could have at least been workshopped over time to be made better if he had just been given more time. But instead, this entire production was just... It definitely felt like it was rushed the entire way through, and I'm pretty sure that's how it was. Just felt like, we don't have enough time to come up with the story, so let's just introduce this stretched-out MacGuffin quest, and then we don't have time to... write all these interesting things about them, and shoot all these interesting things about them gathering up forces, so we'll just do that off screen. The entire thing was so contrived because it had to be in order to get something out and into the theaters so that Disney could make money, and, and the sad thing about it is, I'm pretty sure, like, this story is so bad, like, while I was watching it, I was, like... What I always feel like is, I think in my head, I think that I'm a great storyteller and that I could tell some pretty cool stories. And, when I was younger, I would actually make up these stories in my head, like write down my ideas for a series that I would one day make when I became a writer or something like that, and then I watch these shows where, they come up with... I come up with all these fan theories about what's going to happen, and then, if they're good shows anyway, the stuff that does happen, this is way better writing than my shit fan fiction that I came up with. Thank goodness I'm not in the writing booth. I would just come up with a bunch of really bad fan fiction ideas. But in the case with this movie, like, I'm fairly confident that I could actually write a better movie than this garbage that was put out into theaters. Like, I'm not kidding. It was that bad. Me, an amateur writer who has never really had any significant training in his life. I am convinced that I could write a better script and a better movie than was done for this movie. And maybe one day in the future I will do a rewrite of this movie to try to make it better. I'm planning to do rewrites for and of course hindsight obviously is 2020, where after you see the movie. But I am convinced that but even without hindsight, even without looking at this movie and saying in retrospect what could have been done to improve upon this movie, even without hindsight, if I were to just not see this movie and come up with a fan script as to what would happen, I am convinced that it would be a better movie than what we got with this garbage, because this was just so incredibly disappointing and so infantile in its writing. Like, the writing was so incredibly bad in this movie that it's just... It was shocking. Like, I've never seen writing this bad in a Star Wars movie. It was just, oh my gosh, jeez, it was so bad. Like, it was so bad that, like, over a year later, I'm still fucking complaining about it. Like, there are just these random conversations where I'm having with other people, and then I just reflect upon, oh my gosh, that movie was so shit. Like, and this movie just gets worse and worse, like, every time I think about it. Like, it got worse the second time I watched it, which made me not ever want to watch it again. And the more I think about it, the more I think, oh my gosh, this was so shit. This could have been so much better, and it could have been so much more satisfying. And it just wasn't. Oh my gosh. I mean, honestly, the thing about this movie is that, Avengers Endgame was the movie that did everything right, that this movie did everything wrong. Like, I'm not even that huge a fan of Marvel. Like, obviously, there have been some movies that I've enjoyed from Marvel, but I don't consider myself, or at least I didn't consider myself, a huge Marvel fan. Like, Marvel's great, it's amazing, I'm so excited to watch Avengers Endgame. No, Star Wars was my thing. Star Wars was, like, the franchise that I was so obsessed with. Like, that and Star Wars and Avatar, like... Obviously, the animated series and not the movie. But yeah, Star Wars and Avatar, like, those were my series. Those were my franchises. Those were my worlds that I was so incredibly invested in. And the movies, like, I remember sitting in the theater when The Force Awakens finally came out, and I was just, it was such an experience for me. Like, my heart was, it was pounding. Like, finally seeing another movie on the big screen about Star Wars again, and and it was just, I started off so excited with this new sequel trilogy, and by the end, with this movie, it's just, so disappointing. But again, it's like, everything this movie did wrong, Avengers Endgame did so right. Like, it gave a satisfying conclusion. It actually, built up them gathering their forces, which, by the way, in Avengers Endgame, of course, it focused on them getting the Avengers who had died, but had already been built up in previous movies back so that they could defeat the main bad guy. So it felt, I'll tell you this, it definitely felt more satisfying to see all those characters that have already been previously established coming through those Doctor Strange portals than it was for all those random ships to just come by that Lando apparently got. Like, because again, there were moments in this movie where it felt like they were trying to do Avengers Endgame, because that was a very satisfying conclusion to the Marvel story, even though obviously it's not over. But this was not. It felt like they were trying to be big and epic in Avengers Endgame, but that's not what happened. Like, it just... Avengers Endgame, that movie was so incredible, really, and it did... This movie, The Rise of Skywalker, it could have been an Avengers Endgame, but it just wasn't. It just didn't set anything up right. It focused on a bunch of filler. It was just rushed out, and, like, it tried to be Avengers Endgame, but it couldn't measure up. Did you do it? Did you get the movie out on time? Yes, but what did it cost? Everything. Oh, gosh, yeah. Also, by the way, Avengers Endgame actually said gay rights. And, yeah, Avengers Endgame was the movie that actually said gay rights, so, yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say, I guess. This has been the Aromantic Shipper. Bye. I don't want to think about this movie anymore. This was pretty much all I had to say about it. I just want to be done with it. I just wanted to get my thoughts out, over a year after I originally saw it, so these are my thoughts on this piece of fucking shit movie. Bye, y'all. Bye.